All right, more on the Daca decision now. Joining us, Oklahoma Senator James Lankford. He's a Republican who serves on the Homeland Security Committee. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning as well. Busy morning.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about police reform and a lot of other issues, but let's start with Daca. Your colleague, the Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, was on the Senate floor saying he's crying tears of joy about this. Then he walked across the street to the Supreme Court where there are Daca recipients cheering this decision on. My sense is you have a much different reaction, sir.
Yeah, this makes the future for Daca recipients even more murky. You go back to actual history here, not the rewrite of history, but actual history. In February 2018, the Senate put on the floor 4 different bills to try to deal with the legal status for Daca. One of those was from the president, offering the ability to be able to give permanent citizenship to those individuals from Daca. Literally days before there was a final agreement on those 4, the Supreme Court snatched it away and said, we want to look at this first. And they created a situation that would have been resolved 2 years ago into this muddy morass that we're in now, that they've now said basically every future administration has to play Mother May I with every court to say, do I like your opinion and your reasons enough? If you don't, I can keep sending it back to you and keep sending it back to you. And any partisan judge in any court in America could take any opinion they don't like or executive action and suddenly hold up any president. So this does create a situation where every president in the future is bound by President Trump's executive actions unless they can find a court that disagrees with that. And that's just arbitrary on its face.
Senator, it's great to have you here this morning to react to this news. Nancy Pelosi just spoke a short time ago on Capitol Hill. Her reaction is this supports our values as a country. On the ruling itself, she said we were in such dread as to what could happen at the court. So we'll continue to see how that side reacts. But meanwhile, we're waiting for a reaction from the president. How would you like to see the White House proceed?
Well, the president, I would assume, is going to come out and say, OK, we're going to go back and reevaluate this. Clearly, no president is supposed to be, until today, bound by the actions of a previous president. No president can make legislation that can't be undone. But now the court has said any president can only undo the actions of a previous president if the court agrees to that. And that's absurd, again, on its face. That violates all separation of powers. So I'd assume the president's going to come out, challenge the issue of separation of powers, which he should, step out and say that the White House has worked for years to try to get to a legal solution on Daca that actually goes through Congress, not through this arbitrary system through the courts, and that the White House is going to put out a proposal in the days ahead. But I agree with John Roberts, the other John Roberts, as we say, that when he made the statement, this is not going to happen before the election. There's a lot going on right now, and so it puts the situation even more arbitrary for those folks that are in Daca instead of getting it to a solution that we would have had 2 years ago.
A lot going on indeed, and one of those big issues, of course, is police reform. We were here about 24 hours ago, and we were showing you and your Republican colleagues live. Tim Scott is leading the effort, but you're there front and center as well. Shortly after that news conference, the #2 Democrat in the Senate, Dick Durbin, had this to say about Tim Scott's effort and your effort. Listen.
What we say on the Democratic side is we cannot waste this historic moment, this singular opportunity. Let's not do something that is a token, half-hearted approach.
He talked about a token approach. Obviously, Tim Scott, as the only black Republican in the Senate, took offense to that. Durbin apologized later. I want to get lost just on the back and forth on that, but I want you to react to that, and most importantly, moving forward, given this kind of tension back and forth, how do you move forward? What do you expect to get in terms of bipartisan reform, sir?
I would expect that we wouldn't pour gasoline on a fire, that we as Congress would try to be able to work to actually pour water on the fire at this point. But Democrats have thrown out terms like what Dick Durbin threw out, that it's a token effort, knowing exactly what that means. We had Sherrod Brown came out and basically said Mitch McConnell is appealing to his bigoted base, basically saying all Republicans are bigots. So this is a way to be able to divide it. What they're arguing about is one area of this bill that we disagree on, and it's on qualified immunity. They want to strip away and expose every police officer in the country to litigation all the time. We do not. And so they're saying it's completely unacceptable. It's a weak bill in that. There are lots of areas of common ground on this between the two bills, because when we deal with racism and police reform, these are not supposed to be, at least, partisan issues. And we haven't approached it in a partisan way. Quite frankly, I'm a Republican by choice because I believe in the party of Lincoln and equal opportunity for every person and equal access and equal justice under the the law. That's a basic principle of the Party of Lincoln that we have established 150 years ago. That still remains true for us today. But for Democrats, they're just trying to throw out over and over again, all Republicans are racist, they're isolationists, they're whatever it may be, and to be able to throw that out, and it continues to be more and more divisive as the country. And as Democrats look at Tim Scott and to say, well, he's the only black Republican in the Senate, they sit in their conference where there are 2 black Democrats in the Senate, and they somehow think, okay, well, we don't have 1, we have 2, and that somehow changes all the dynamics. It's just bizarre in the conversation. So let's look at the issues and treat each other as Americans rather than try to divide, because there are areas where law enforcement and where communities of color and where all Americans can agree on, and that's what we're trying to zero in on so we can make us a more perfect union.
Senator, brand new reaction now going back to the Daca decision. About an hour after that was handed down, President Trump has just tweeted this. These horrible and politically charged decisions coming out of the Supreme Court are shotgun blasts into the face of people that are proud to call themselves Republicans or conservatives. We need more justices or we will lose our Second Amendment and everything else. Vote Trump 2020. I just want to point out that Chief Justice John Roberts led this ruling. The recent LGBTQ decision was authored by Neil Gorsuch, a Trump pick for the Supreme Court. Your reaction to that?
Well, we also go back to the Obamacare decision that was led by Chief Justice Roberts. This is the same band that did the Obamacare decision, is the same band that's doing the Daca decision on this. In the Obamacare decision, Chief Justice Roberts determined that Congress has the right to do anything they want to as long as it's a tax. It was a sweeping new invention that if Congress declares something a tax, they can require any American to do anything they want to. This is a new invention of a quasi-legislative action that's not really legislative. It comes out of the executive branch, but if the executive branch and the courts agree, basically they can create new legislation on Americans. Again, it's odd to be able to see it. I would expect it from the liberal justices. I'm surprised by Chief Justice John Roberts, but after the decision from from Obamacare and then now from this decision, I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
All right. Senator James Lankford covered a lot of ground with us. Appreciate you rolling with the breaking news. Thanks for coming on.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator.